Great to have you on board, Alex. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me again. Yeah.
And I would like to talk a little bit about Italian sparkling wine. So that the perception in US of regions like Trentino, regions of like Franciacorta and so on.
Yeah.
So what is like the feeling? Do people like try to go for the region, or they're more focused on just the producer?
I mean, it really depends on the customer, and the type of client. Like when we were talking about Prosecco before, for example, this is predominantly what people are aware of as the Italian sparkling wine. Just like if you were to say France, they think champagne. I mean, being in Italy, I think that there's much more focus on regions like Franciacorta and these other regions, and also separating them as different types of wine. No, I mean, just because as we were talking about before, like I work predominantly with natural wines, so it's actually the impetus for a lot of fascination for people are Prosecco col Fondo and wines like this that are natural wines but are also sparkling. But I think in general, I mean, unless you're speaking to somebody who's very well versed in wine, or maybe a wine professional or sommelier, there isn't a lot of focus on the different types of sparkling wines from Italy, which I've discovered it's quite vast. Yeah. After being here for a couple of years,
it's huge. And sometimes even for people that are professional in the wine industry in Italy, you keep just discovering new methods, new areas, and new grapes. It's a great challenge, and it's always stimulating. Do you have any, beside the areas like traditionally around Veneto and so on, but do you have any other favorite area in Italy for sparkling wines?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, we had mentioned it before, but Emilia-Romagna is probably one of the most interesting. I think from all the way from Piacenza all the way towards the coast. There's a vast array of different types of sparkling wines. I think that people perceive, if I'm speaking from the American perspective, I think that we perceive that Lambrusco is it. However, there's a really fascinating realm of the Trebbiano, sparkling Trebbiano, Malvasia, and different varieties of the type as well. So I find it to be I may be wrong, but I find it to be one of the more diverse sparkling wine regions of Italy because of the different varieties. It's basically like whatever grapes we have, let's re-ferment them in bottle and make it sparkling. I think that's really exciting. Yeah.
I hear you on that. I believe that it's the same way. It's super interesting also because they're kind of like bringing back all the traditional old methods with also they don't deny the technology and so on, but they kind of like live together, which is super great.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, well, if we go more north, like Trentino, so...
Yeah, to be honest, when I was living in the US, we talked a little bit about, Ferrari. I mean, the Trento Dock is not necessarily one of the more recognized regions. Obviously, like I said, wine professionals do, so just putting that disclaimer out there. But on a consumer basis, typically people don't come to the wine bar and request a Trento Dock or Spumante from Trentino or something. I'm personally really interested in it. And mostly from the world of natural wine. Yes, in Trento there's many natural winemakers and predominantly a big focus on biodynamic winemaking, from Foradori to Patrick Uccelli a little farther north.
I like the way he works on skin contact with Gable.
Amazing, yeah. And the one in the amphora also, fantastic.
He's able to blend together complexity, but also the mountains. So they're always super elegant.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, and I think that's a predominant characteristic of wines from that region. I think there's a culture of working in a very specific way, and very clean, very organized. Everything from the Pergola Trentino, the way of raising the vines, everything has space and is clean. And even in the natural wine making world there, it seems from my perspective that they continue this tradition also. It's quite organized. I did 2 years ago, I did the Chardonnay. I worked a couple of days at the Chardonnay harvest with Matteo Furlani and his team. And I had visited a long list of natural winemakers before this, and I had never seen such a clean cantina. The rows were so, there was biodiversity, there's lots of grass and green manure growing and stuff like this, but everything was
Yeah. I mean, they're super organized. It's part of their mentality. I think that it's something you really find in the mountain regions everywhere around the world. It's always clean and organized.
Yeah.
So,
and you can taste it in the wine also. It comes out, I mean, this is a wine re-fermented in bottle. It's, just like the wine we tasted earlier, super clean. Yeah. I really appreciate that. Yeah.
I'm drooling. So
yeah, there you go. Good idea.
I'm just going to open it so that we can start tasting it. As you experience it directly, is there anything else you would like to say about Furlani?
Oh yeah, I mean quite a bit. I mean, like I because following the harvest, I also because I work as a wine journalist occasionally, and I wrote kind of a long biography and story about the way that they work and what they do there, and I think it's a really interesting project. Also because once again he's bottling all of his wines without sulfur and fermentation or in bottling, to get this type of cleanness in a glass and consistency also is really important. Of course, you have to consider like their geographical location. I mean, it's the temperature changes. Fluctuations are perfect for controlling fermentation without temperature. So, which is very difficult for a lot of people. Maybe, for example, in Emilia-Romagna, where there's less of these diurnal shifts in the evening. So.
The method they used on this wine is one of the really ancient Italian methods. So it comes from the 1500s and is about blocking the fermentation, but at that time it would happen naturally because the temperatures were really, really cold. So of course, if you need to do this kind of method in the south of Italy where it's super hot and super warm, it's a little bit more complicated. But on the north, on the mountains, it's natural.
Yeah, exactly. And he's calling this Metodo Interrotto. I think that's because instead of disgorging after the 2 years on the lees, he doesn't disgorge, right? They leave it in the bottle and
He doesn't, and the fermentation restarts kind of like in a natural way. So the fermentation was not actually completed, it's kind of interrupted. And that's actually why it's called that way. But it's super interesting. Even just from the color, you can see that the wine is amazing. So I imagine that here there is quite a lot of Pinot Noir.
25%.
25%.
Yeah. And the rest is Chardonnay, of course. So kind of following the exactly, the Spumante tradition. Yeah. It's actually, I mean, he makes a lot of fantastic wines, the ones in the clear bottle as well, that where he's using these autochthonous varietals, and some of them are a little bit more how do you say it, like experimental and interesting. But what I love about this is that it has that direct cleanness, like the creaminess in the mouth. That would kind of remind you of like a Spumante from Trento. So.
Yeah, even the nose, it's super clean.
Yeah.
I really dare anyone to just smell the wine and say, "Oh, this is not a Trento DOC."
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's super traditional. It's Pinot Noir and Chardonnay are international varieties, but in Trentino, they're kind of like autochthonous at this point because they've been there for so many decades, from so many years, that they feel that they're kind of like the local population has a strong connection with Pinot Noir, with Chardonnay.
Absolutely, yeah.
That needs a super cold climate. Even if Trentino, sometimes we forget, but it's actually quite hot during summertime.
Yeah. No, in fact, Matteo Furlani, when speaking with him, passing through the vines, he claimed that Pinot Nero is his like favorite grape. It's the queen to the Chardonnay, and he, the one thing is he was mentioning that he would produce more even in that region, but during the harvest, he only has a small team of people that are working with him, and during that season, there's quite a lot of unpredicted storms that can come. And Pinot Nero, of course, is susceptible to retaining too much water and exploding. And also, mold and diseases as well. So he was like, I would grow, 50% Pinot Nero if I could, but it's just like sometimes we have to harvest it in a day or two, because he's watching the weather and seeing what's happening. So
we say that Pinot Noir has a really bad attitude. So
yeah.
Actually, he wakes up early during the year and he's actually quite moody, and then you need to like not disturb it. It needs to be stable. The temperatures need to not change too much. Besides, of course, day and night. So it's not easy to deal with Pinot Noir anywhere in the world. So, but it's amazing also at the palate.
Yeah,
super clean. Of course, it's not a breakfast wine, but still, it will really go well with nothing. What I mean is that with anything, but you can even just drink it without having any food at all.
I believe so. Yeah.
It's dry, super clean, nice acidity, and even the bubbles are quite elegant.
Yeah, absolutely, and a bit creamy as well. That's what I love about that texture. It kind of fills the mouth, just like a Spumante, Which I don't always have the same experience with wines re-fermented in bottles sometimes. I mean, I kind of like that. Like leggermente frizzante is nice too, but this is perfect for cleaning my palate and all that.
Yeah, this would be really, if you taste it, you can think about an amazing Metodo Classico.
I see. Yeah.
But actually it's not, and you're amazed when you discover that it's not a Trento DOC. It's creamy, it's juicy, it has a bit of complexity. It's not too complex, but you don't need that probably in the glass. But the nose, it's so catchy.
Absolutely, I agree. Yeah, it's something interesting too about Furlani, and of course a lot of winemakers from the region is they're also for his production. He's using something like 20 to 30% of the grapes for his own production, and the rest is sold negociant to other cantinas in the region. Same quality grapes, same organic certification, everything like that, but going to bigger cantinas because, I think it's an interesting point too, is that a lot of these small production natural winemakers also have a lot of bills to pay and mouths to feed and things like that. And we like to romanticize and think that it's possible to be able to continue your life, and only make 20,000, 30, 40,000 bottles. However, a lot of other haciendas have to cultivate other agricultural items to sell and stuff. But it's a reality for a lot of winemakers that sometimes you do have to produce more grapes and also sell them as well.
Also, you get immediate cash flow that way, which is fundamental.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, you find yourself waiting for the wine to start selling, and you do know how hard it is to sell wine.
Yeah.
And especially natural wine, you need to wait for it. You can't just go on the market right away whenever you need. So it's a long process, and it would be great to see a world where a natural wine producer can just be kind of like an artist, and but there are bills to pay. Yeah,
in fact, No, it's cool too. Also, working with them in the harvest. So I don't know if you're familiar with it, but right now in this moment, there's a big discussion in the wine world in general, but natural wine about labor practices. And I mean, we don't have to go into detail about who and whatnot, but
we saw what happened in the south of Italy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and and something that's really important for us, for me as an importer and being here, is being able to spend time with winemakers. Not extensively, but enough to kind of see what's happening, especially during harvest, during seasonal labor. Because, usually it's a team, 3 or 4 or 5 people managing, vineyards, mostly the family throughout the year. But then harvest, even the smallest natural winemakers also sometimes have to hire labor through cooperatives. I know you're familiar with this, but just when I visited Furlani, I realized that they're making 40,000 bottles, right? Per year. So having that knowledge, and then also seeing the amount of hands that are on the grapes, which was roughly like 13, I think, to count, and then thinking about the rest of the harvest that's happening, having that kind of perspective really helps you to do the math around it. So it's really, I'm always happy when I can kind of go during harvest, not just, I'm not importing Furlani, right? This was just for, to spend time with them, and also because I wrote an article about the producer. But it's something really important to focus on, I think, is like when you are going to visit or work harvest, is kind of put these numbers together and see if it makes sense. And in this case, it does. So like for cost per bottle versus how many people are actually working during harvest, the actual annual production. A lot of American and international importers aren't doing this math. Nobody in particular, but it's the reason why I'm bringing this up also is because in natural wine, especially, we have all these discussions about, like we were saying before, homeopathic treatments. You have, how much sulfur is in the wine, whether you're filtering it or not, or blah, 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 blah. Is it biodynamic? Is it organic? All of this focus on these very, conscious details, right?
Yeah.
But then there's this whole thing is how is the wine, the grapes actually raised and produced? And if you're buying negociant, which is popular in many regions, if you're buying from other farmers, how are their employees working and being compensated? And I personally think that needs to be a bigger part of the natural wine discussion in general, considering that it's the movement is based on this type of mentality of and this ideology of doing things that are good for the earth. It's a very people-oriented art, and craft. And when we put these kind of things to the side, I think it's kind of like ignoring one of the more important details, So I hope to see in the future like a natural wine that people are talking more about labor practices and these type of things, and versus like all of the technical, statistics of the wine.
Natural wine is kind of like a state of mind. So it's an approach, it's a way of living, it's a way of life. And I think that whenever you talk about making wine or anything in a natural way, you need to consider, of course, the state, the health of your workers, of the environment, and people drinking your wine. But all three elements go together, and you can't actually unbalance in one direction. And you always need to keep a hand and an eye on every single person. As you were saying, as Matteo was saying, on Pinot Noir, for example, you need to be quick, which means that you need to have more people, and you're able to manage the workforce in a proper way.
In fact,
we tend not to discuss much about it, but it's fundamental.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, luckily, in the case of this wine, I did see that and it's all workers actually, people that live in the nearby village. It's not cooperative hired labor and stuff. So a lot of family members intermixed and stuff. But
your approach, your way of working reminds me quite a lot of the Japanese importers.
Okay, nice.
Because they tend to come over to Italy, check how the winery is working, and to see how they treat labor, how they manage costs and so on, even on natural wine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I say, okay, we're gonna put our face to promote your wines, because of course it's a matter of respecting, the chain is so long, going from the vineyard to the person at the table drinking your wine. So it's a matter of probably building reputation, respect.
Absolutely, I agree. Yeah.
So where do you see the Italian natural wine scene in the future? So do you think it's gonna keep growing, or?
Hopefully. Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. I mean, it seems that way. I mean, there's been an explosion of natural wine fairs all over Italy, all over the world, but I've seen quite a concentration of them here in Italy. So there's a lot of obvious market potential and interest in it, which, fuels the future. However, it can also be a bit, how do you say, pericoloso?
Dangerous.
Yeah, a bit, because when any type of small, I think this kind of ties into what we were just talking about, when any type of small movement or type of, just movement in general becomes more marketable and more, I didn't want to say mainstream, but following in that trend, it opens the door for lots of people to kind of do it just for the sake of doing it. So obviously, and it's hard to, sometimes you can see in between the lines, but sometimes not, in many cases. So I'm hopeful that it continues, but I think that distributors, importers, wine professionals, as long as they're doing their research and knowing who they're buying from and all this kind of stuff, that there's a bright future for it. But there needs to be a lot of checks along the way. I'm not for regulating natural wine. I don't have that perspective, and I don't mean it like an inspection or certification, because then there's more bureaucracy where we don't already need it, right?
Nope.
It's already enough just to get an organic certification and blah, blah, blah. But as I've been going around, I learn about a new grape variety in Italy every day, every other day, 3 or 4 times a week. And to me, you know, obviously I'm here in Italy because, you know, my wife is Italian and because I've been working here and staying here. But I will say this, so it's not a biased statement though, that Italy is my favorite wine producing country. It's the most fascinating, I think, in the sense. Now, don't get me wrong, you know, Austria's really
amazing.
exciting. Czech Republic is fantastic. I mean, even, you know, France and Spain, the bigger countries. But in particular, the diversity of grapes, the personality of the winemakers, I've been predominantly excited about that since I first started to discover it. And and it just keeps getting more and more interesting, even as the industry grows in different ways.
I think that probably we're also discovering Italy. What I mean is that for many years it's kind of like being a giant that was sleeping. And now the natural wine producers are kind of like digging down in the soul of the wine industry, rediscovering all the old varieties and so on. And so it's a kind of like a trip, a voyage that we're actually doing all together. So I think that's probably the most exciting thing.
True. I mean, even getting, I mean, not starting a conversation about cheese, but I mean, it's the same thing. Like before I came here, I knew Gorgonzola, I had Asiago, but I had never had Asiago, you know, Malaganera, or I hadn't had, you know, Bastardo del Grappa and these type of cheese, you know, never even heard of them. But Italy has such an incredible diversity of artisanal products, you know, ranging from cheese to cured meats to whatever. I know this is obvious to many, but
it's never obvious.
Okay,
It's never obvious.
But that's something that's always astonishing me is the I wouldn't say the gastronomic potential, because it already exists. Like the potential to repopularize and rediscover these traditional regions, I think, continues to grow, and it's really it keeps living here very exciting, I think, for me. I'm mostly excited about food, so
I can tell.
If it continues like that, I'll stay a happy person.
Super. Thanks, Alex, for being with us, and thanks for bringing the wine. I mean,
absolutely, anytime, actually.
You can come over whenever you feel like. If you keep bringing amazing wines like this, it's just perfect.
Sounds good. Cheers.
Thanks
again for having me.
Cheers.
Cheers.